Hi, John.
Hi, Simon.
Today is first time I'm recording a conversation with a potential client that is willing to move to Russia. And John Hare has an interesting story that he would like to share and probably raise his questions on legal matters on how to move to Russia. Please, John, you're more than welcome.
So I'll give you a little bit of background about my coming into Russia. I've been coming to Russia almost every year since about 2011. And I met some people over there. I got to know some friends there. And I'm a builder by profession, and I have assisted them in different ways, building things and helping them get established. And about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I've taken my family there a number of times. And about 3 years ago, I looked at the world economies, I looked at the way the world was heading, and decided that I think we will move to Russia. And so myself, my wife, and my children are desiring to move to Russia. I did a fair bit of research, as much as I could, over the internet, looking for different opportunities, doing different ways. I actually contacted the Russian consulate in Australia, seeking advice, because I think anybody who wants to, or is considering moving to Russia, or is thinking about it, it's very hard to get clear information about the process that's involved. And so I contacted the Russian consulate, and they gave me some vague information. And because I was looking there was a work visa, there was a business visa, there was obviously study visas, and with all the different things involved, we chose to apply for study visas, with the hope that we would study Russian, can get our Russian up to an acceptable level, sit the language test and the history and law test, and then from there apply for temporary residency, and then move on to permanent residency, and one day hopefully citizenship. So in I think the 1st of May last year, 2019, we arrived in Russia to begin our 3-month study visa. It was issued by a school just outside of the city of Novosibirsk, and we studied with them. We then got our 1-year study visa and continued studying with them. We knew that generally the quota for the temporary residency opens in around the end of the year. So we were working very hard to get ourselves to a stage where we would be able to sit the test. We sat the test for the language and history side late November, and then began the process of going to the migration office to put our names down to get that we would be able to get onto the quota for temporary residency in Novosibirsk. That's a very confusing process if you try to do it by yourself. Obviously, our Russian is mediocre at best. My children are better at Russian than I am. But so we were getting so many conflicting messages. We would talk to the school that we were dealing with and try and get information from them, because they're obviously native Russian speakers, and they couldn't really get it. And then we sort of heard that they didn't even issue a quota this year for temporary residency in Novosibirsk because of the proposed changes that were coming in this year, 2020, which I'm yet to find out whether that's actually correct or not. So then I was looking through it was actually a Facebook site where people who are interested in moving to Russia sort of discuss things. And I came across a question, and then in the comments, I saw a response by you. And that's so I contacted you and said, hey, you seem to know what you're talking about. Can I, get in contact with you and ask you lots of questions? So here I am.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. Yeah, I mean, you did an amazing thing. I mean, that shows how your willingness to go to Russia is really strong. Getting a student visa, yeah, and then going through classes, learning Russian. Yeah, that's a really interesting story. Yeah, we'll go into the details on what are other possible variants, and especially with the new laws that came into force last year and this year, what different variants they can provide you and your family. So what's your plan in doing to Russia? I mean, you would like to work, open your own business, be employed in a different company? What's the ideal route? If we don't take
ideal
students.
route is in Australia. I have my profession is building. I also have a farm that I run. So my two areas are building and farming, and they are two areas that I see that are actually have a lot of potential in Russia. I see, Russia is becoming an agricultural powerhouse once again, and along with that involves with their the desire to push for larger families with the maternity capital, people being able to build new houses. Another area where we could have a business that would benefit us, and obviously also benefit the Russian economy, which is what we're hoping to do. So along the lines of building and farming.
Well, this is really good to know. And which area of Russia would you like to reside? I mean, why Novosibirsk? It's because they issued the student visa, or it's you like the area, you knew about that?
The friends that I know in Russia were from Novosibirsk, and in Novosibirsk as a city is okay. And it's obviously it's not St. Petersburg and it's not Moscow as far as with its cultural heritage and things like that. But I have visited the Altai Mountains a number of times, and they are stunning. They are very, very beautiful. And so we are considering having our farm in the Altai region near the mountains. For quality of life and for producing food that is ecologically superior.
Okay, understood. Well, if you allow me, I will then maybe tell you some of the probably laws and potential methods how you could utilize those laws in moving to Russia. And as of February 2020, Russia has established a list of so-called qualified, I would call them also socially important professions for the Russian Federation. And foreign national that works in one of those professions for a year, officially employed in Russia, is eligible to apply for Russian citizenship with no other grounds like family, with no quota, without a necessity to go through the temporary residency permit quota that you mentioned before. And this list consists of 135 professions, and most of those professions are connected to medical specialists, so like 65 professions would be doctors, but there are professions which are connected with agriculture and construction. I will send you actually the full list of the professions by email, but to give you a hint, in agriculture, there would be agricultural engineer, agronomist, agrochemist. I have to use to read it. agricultural machinery repairman. So these are the agricultural technologists. So these professions are connected with agriculture, and with regards to construction, there are also about 20 professions connected with construction. It would be construction supervision engineer, setup and testing engineer, production management organization engineer, it's a bit different. Production preparation, also different. Construction engineer, design engineer, electrical engineer. So these are connected with construction. But in your case, I believe what potentially can be done is that you do not, do not seek for a job, but you register your own business, your own company, and basically employ yourself and your family members for those positions that are on the list. And it is perfectly legal, yeah, because it's your company, it's your business, and you decide which people you would like to have and what type of professions they would be working at. So
that's actually what I do in Australia. I already have a building company in Australia, and I employ my two sons as builders because they're both in the profession. So it would be the same.
Yeah, perfect. So that's probably the fastest, and I would say that's the most fastest route to get Russian residency and citizenship. So the way the process works is that you register a company in Altai region, for example, where you would like to reside. You employ yourself and family members in those job titles. The requirement is that they work for 6 months, and after 6 months, everyone is eligible to apply for a permanent residency in Russia. The process would be 4 months. After 1 year in total of working in one of those professions, you could apply for Russian citizenship, provided that you have already the residency. Yeah, so 6 months you work, apply for residency. In 4 months you get the residency, and then in another 2 months you apply for Russian citizenship. So that's simple. With regards to agricultural land, I'm not an expert in the land laws, but to the best of my knowledge, right now foreign nationals are not allowed to buy agricultural land. You can buy it either in the name of the company, or you can buy it once you become Russian citizen. Moreover, there are special tax regimes connected to agricultural farmery, and there are special government support aid for those that would like to develop the agricultural business, which you could potentially seek for. It would be a wise idea. Of course, many things in Russia wouldn't be very straightforward to be done. I'm talking about credit from this Rossельхозbank, which is the biggest bank connected to agriculture. They have multiple programs on leasing of the equipment, on helping with the cattle if required. So there are a lot of programs which needs to be looked into deeply, but it's all possible, achievable. Of course, there is a lot of paperwork to be provided in order to qualify to get those special regimes and aid from the government and credits, but it's all possible to be done. And once you become Russian citizen, you can basically acquire land, agricultural land. Plus, there is a program which allows to any Russian citizen to get a hectare of land in Russia. Of course, it's not a land which is somewhere near
Yeah.
Moscow. It's somewhere in the far regions, which I'm not also very familiar with where the regions are. I mean, if needed, I could look into that. But yeah, these are the possibilities that you may have with regards to immigration matters. In order to get the Russian residency at first, the documents that you would require. One document you would require from Australia, which is police clearance certificate, that has to be apostilled. Yeah, then it has to be translated and notarized in Russian. Then you would need documents confirming this particular ground that you're using to apply, and there are two documents. That would be a labor contract between your company and yourself, your sons, your family members for a particular position. So it has to exactly outline the particular position. And the second document that is a confirmation for applying for residency on this ground is an extract from the pension fund, which shows that on your individual account of the pension fund, there are the amounts paid by the employer as pension contributions. Yeah, so it's pretty simple to do. I mean, when you register a company, you employ people and you pay them salary, you are obliged as an employer to pay the pension contributions.
It's the same in Australia.
Yeah, and so they would appear on the pension fund record. The thing, a step back actually is okay. This professions, it's you can employ foreign nationals for that professions. Yeah, but foreign nationals, in order to be employed, would require work permits. So this might be actually the hardest part in the whole process, yeah, because with the residency permit and citizenship, it would be much more straightforward. With the work permits, because in Russia, foreign nationals cannot work without a work permit, and each company and the work permit is employer sponsored, yeah, so you cannot get a work permit just as an individual, yeah, so the company, the employer has to request it. And the way the system works is that the company has to request a quota for the work permits. So each particular employer requests a quota for a particular country national and for a particular position. So that process may take, I would say, 4 to 5 months to get the work permit. Because at first the employer gets the employment permit, and then the foreign national obtains his individual work permit and then a work visa. And after that, foreign nationals could be legally employed in that company and work in Russia. And so after you receive work permits, you can then, I mean, you would need to work 6 months, pay the pension contributions and the salary. And after that, you apply for residency permit. Yeah, you would need to get a Russian language test, history and law, and it will be, if you received already one for the level of temporary residency permit, in this case, you would need to pass for another one because it will be a different level for residency permit. It's not much harder; it's pretty same level. So it's I mean, it's possible to take and to pass this test. Other documents that would be required is obviously medicals, confirming that you don't have the HIV, tuberculosis, drug addiction. Then you would need to provide proof that you can sustain yourself in the country, but that would be certificates and salary payment slips from the employer. And police clearance I mentioned, and all the rest are like photos, confirmation of payment of state duty, notarized translation of all your passport pages, migration registration and the address where you stay, migration card which is issued at the border. And that's pretty much all the documents that you would require. Out of that list of 135 professions, there is one profession which does not require a quota to get a work permit. Yeah, and that profession is called Director for Economics. We call it Commercial Director, but the exact name is Director for Economics. So basically, this particular profession is also on the other list of professions which are for obtaining work permits without a quota. And on that list, there are mainly professions like General Director, top management, and one of those is Director for Economics. And this profession allows you to get residency, whereby like General Director of the company doesn't allow you to get residency. Yeah? So you could utilize this particular profession as one not to obtain quota, but for all the other professions you would need to get quota and then work permit. Yeah? And Director for Economics, you straight away register the company and right away apply for the work permit without going into the quota system for the work permits. I actually have another client right now that is working in one of the professions that would allow him to apply for residency and then citizenship in Russia. But he works in Russia. There are two types of work permits. One is called, we call it a standard work permit, which is subject to quota, unless those lists of professions which are exempt from quota, like General Director and top management. And actually there are others, yeah, but we will not go into that because they're not relevant to residency. So it's a standard work permit. The process takes about like 4 to 5 months to get a standard work permit. It's valid for 1 year. You need to have higher education. You need to provide diploma. You need to pass the Russian language test in order to get only the work permit. Yeah, but then there is another type of the work permit, which is called highly qualified specialist work permit. It's just the name. The main criterion for that, in order to apply for that work permit, is actually the amount of salary that employer is willing to pay for foreign national. And this amount is 2 million rubles a year, which is 167,000 rubles a month. With all the time changing of the dollar, let me tell you what it will be in dollars. So it's like 2,000, roughly 400 US dollars a month.
Yep.
If employer pays to an employee this amount of money monthly and it's gross, it includes the tax, individual income tax. Then such foreign national can apply for so-called highly qualified specialist work permit. And the difference would be the following. The processing time is 3 weeks instead of 3-4 months. There is no Russian language test. There is no medical test. So there is no necessity to have a special education or higher diploma. The main thing is that the employer pays that amount of salary. Then government says, okay, if you're willing to pay, go ahead, pay this salary. You get a work permit straightforward. The only thing which is not, which is very beneficial for this kind of work permits, but not very beneficial into our situation of getting residency, is that the legislation, and especially tax legislation, basically says if you employ highly qualified specialist work permit and pay him this amount of salary, employer is not obliged to pay social taxes, pension contributions, or any other. Yeah, and basically this means that all the highly qualified specialists, they cannot utilize, even if their job title on the highly qualified specialist work permit is the same as the job title out of this 135 professions list, they cannot apply for the residency because they cannot provide extract from the pension fund that
Yeah.
pension contributions has been made. But I have a client right now that actually works as a highly qualified specialist. He's not being paid with the pension contributions, only his salary and his individual income tax being deducted. But and he's okay with the proposed scenario is the following. As a highly qualified specialist, foreign national, and this work permit is issued for 3 years, yeah? And
Yep.
it will be valid until the employer pays this amount of salary. So basically, you pay yourself this amount of salary, yeah, and you pay to the government 13% of individual income tax, yeah. So it's about less than $300 is the cost of this work permit in taxes.
Yep.
So as a highly qualified specialist work permit holder, by the law, you are allowed to apply for the residency, but the residency will be different than the residency which is for indefinite period. So this residency would be limited in time for the validity of the work permit. So the work permit is issued for 3 years. As soon as you get the work permit, you can right away apply for the residency, but the residency will be for 3 years only. But what happens then? As soon as you get the residency, you automatically become a permanent resident of Russian Federation, which means that employer is obliged to pay pension contributions on you.
Oh yes, yep.
So it's a strange mixture of rules, but it is perfectly legal and it's possible. Yeah, we have many clients that apply as a highly qualified specialist. They apply for residency permits, and some then use different other grounds, such as being married to a Russian, to apply then for citizenship, which is also allowed. Yeah, if you mix those two different grounds. So as a way out from the necessity to get the quota for a standard work permit for that list, you can actually employ yourself and your family members as highly qualified specialists for the particular job titles that are out of this 135 professions list.
Yep.
You start paying yourself a salary right away as you get the highly qualified specialist work permit. You apply for residency for 3 years. And as soon as you receive the residency, which is 3 months, 3-4 months, your tax liabilities change. And now on top of that salary that you pay, you have to pay pension contributions. And after 6 months, you already, not 6 months, after 1 year, because you already have a residency permit, after 1 year, you could right away apply for Russian citizenship. So the difference is basically the costs, yeah, because if we speak about a standard work permit, there is no, I would say, not minimum amount of salary, but the salary is not like that heavily regulated, because for a highly qualified specialist, you have to pay this 2,400, yeah. And the good thing is that you don't need to pay taxes on top of that, employer taxes. But if we use it in order to get Russian citizenship, then you would need to get a residency and then start to pay the taxes on this amount of money. And the taxes, the scale is regressive. So the employer taxes are 30%, but it's the higher the salary, the lower is the tax. So I would say there is a formula, but I would say that the effective tax rate on this $2,400 in additional employer taxes would be approximately around 15-18%. On top of that, you would need to pay as pension and social contributions. And you would need to do that for 1 year. Yeah. Once you do that, you can apply for the Russian citizenship. Why you would need to do that for 1 year is because if you do not comply with the requirements of this salary, your residency permit, which is linked to the highly qualified specialist work permit, can be also terminated. Yeah, so this
Yep.
residency is very limited in a sense of freedom of what you can do, and it's actually linked to the validity of the work permit and subject to all those conditions that such a work permit imposes on an employer.
Yeah.
So it's you need to basically calculate, yeah, because if you start your company and you do not have right away income, all that would be your expense.
Yeah. So.
If you right away have income, then of course it's much easier because it's much easier. Yeah, you don't
Yeah.
need to pay that from your pocket.
Mm.
So these are the options with regards to where the immigration process can be done. Yeah, from our experience, of course, I mean, although in Russia immigration laws are federal and they are the same in every region, but the problem is, of course, that in Moscow, immigration authorities are much more advanced in the sense of even the premises, even the procedure, how it's done, even the
Yep.
I mean, electronic queues and all that. Yeah. So in the regions, it's much harder. We haven't worked in Altai region to get work permits or residency or citizenship. But with regards to the work permit, the work permit would have to be done locally in Altai region. With regards to the residency and citizenship, it can be done in Moscow because it doesn't have, on that particular ground as a job, it doesn't have a link to a particular region. So
Okay. Yep.
the initial step of getting work permits is regional. The process of obtaining residency and citizenship can be done in Moscow, where I mean procedures are much more straightforward. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's, I would say, in a nutshell, what can be done. So it's not very straightforward, but it's manageable, and the time scale that we are looking at is potentially 1.5 year, 2 years to get Russian citizenship.
So how does it work in relation to of my for my wife, if I'm the director of the company, for my wife, does she need to be employed? And I have, of my 3 children, one of them is married with her husband. She's one of my daughters. She has 2 small children, so she wouldn't be employed per se. So how does it work with her getting residency?
Well, with regards to first with the work permits, um, family members are considered dependent, and they get the, for example, you get a work visa, they can get dependent family member visas. Yeah, but that's I mean, general option, but not in your situation because everyone is basically looking at getting the residency. So anyone that is of age that is an adult, so anyone that is older than 18 years has to have his own ground to apply for Russian residency or citizenship, which means that wives, husbands, they would need to be employed. Yeah, if we're looking at that ground. Yeah. If we're looking at minors, the kids, although they still have a separate application, but they don't need a separate ground. Yeah, so they can apply for the residency based on mother or father.
Yep. Now, how will it work in relation to, we're currently in Russia on study visas? Do we need to leave the country to change to a work visa?
Yes, you would need to do that, but actually there is another possibility that potentially can be utilized. As of 4th of August 2020, so in 3 months, foreign students that study in Russian educational organizations can get work permits can work in Russia without a work permit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which theoretically means that a foreign student on a student visa from day one after 5th of August this year can start working in one of those 135 professions without getting the work permit. Yeah, because being a student, foreign national can work without a work permit in 3 months time from now, but work not full time, but during spare time. Yeah, and this will actually also qualify. So if such foreign national being a student in Russia works for 6 months in that profession, such person is eligible to apply for residency, and after 1 year, working in the profession from the list, such person is eligible to apply for Russian citizenship.
So would that negate the need to apply for a separate work visa?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Yes, but when you said you have student visa, it's from educational organization. Is it a private school? Is it a university?
It's a language school. Yeah,
it's a language school.
Yeah.
We need, because the laws are very new, and I mean, not a single student yet used this rule because it's not been enforced yet to work without a work permit and then get the residency. I would need to double check actually with regards to whether it's okay to get, to work without a work permit if you have a student visa from a language school, or whether it has to be an accredited Russian university, higher education institution. So this I would have to check. I'll come back to you on that. But yeah, there is such possibility. I mean, definitely for students that are studying in Russian universities, as of August, they could, go and start working in one of those professions, and then after 1 year apply for Russian citizenship. So this is definitely a possibility, but I need to double check with regards to language schools whether such student visa will allow further processing of the documents towards their citizenship.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's maybe one of the potential rules.
Yeah. So for somebody on a study visa, currently, that's probably going to be the best option to pursue.
You mean if we confirm that that a student visa, probably, of course, it's much less of the paperwork and much less of the expenses.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking, obviously, learning Russian is an integral part of moving to a new country. So for anybody else who wants to take this path to study for a year and get your language skills up to grade, and then go on to a work style scenario would probably be quite valuable.
No, for sure, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Without language, I know quite a number of friends that have been in Russia for 10 years and speak 50 words, but they don't need Russian wives, something like this, or work where everyone speaks English, but still it's advisable to speak Russian.
Yeah, I think in Moscow and St. Petersburg, it's probably much easier to get away with speaking English, but we're in Novosibirsk and in the Altai region, if you speak English, no one will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
So that's, for us, I guess that's one thing that makes the language so important.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have any more questions for you? Now, in regards to the list of 135 professions, are there stipulations regarding diplomas or things like that need to be, or is it just that you are employed in that position and that grants you the right?
Well, it's governed a bit with the different laws, not immigration, because obviously if you are applying for the Russian hospital as a doctor, of course the employer, the hospital, will need to verify that, I mean, your qualification as a doctor is similar to the ones that are required
Yes.
by the Russian
Yes.
authorities, but some
Yes.
of the professions they don't. Yeah, so it depends
Yeah.
on the particular profession and not
Yeah.
on immigration laws rather than on the employment laws.
Yeah. So some of the professions on that list, you know, regarding construction and say agricultural repair machinery or things like that, where there may not be a specialized diploma in that area, but you have the skills to do it.
Well, if we speak, I mean, if you're planning to register a company in Russia that is that will be involved in the construction, then it's a whole different story with regards to on how to register such company. Yeah, because you would be very straightforward to register the entity itself. Yeah, which will take 2 weeks to do. But in
Yep.
order to be able to provide construction services, you would need to obtain special permissions. So they're not licensing, it's not licensed. You would need to enter into so-called SRO, which is self-governed organizations, which basically issue you the license. Yeah. So it's not issued by the government, it's regulated by the government, but it's basically an association of construction of developers, let's call it like that. And this particular association, of which thousands of those in Russia, they issue you enter into one of those associations, and they issue you the special permissions. And they do have different, I mean, it's a different story of what are the requirements for the workers, yeah, for the, in order even to get such a license, you would need to provide documents confirming that the employees that you have special qualification, have special diplomas, degrees that they are qualified to construct.
Yeah. Yeah. So with my construction business in Australia, what we do is we don't build for clients per se. We build their homes for ourselves and then we sell them. So we will go out and build a home and then we make the money by selling the home, and then we move on to the next one, do 1 or 2 and 3. So we don't engage clients per se. We just buy and build and then on sell, which I presume would be done in Russia as well.
Yeah, you would also need to get those
Yep.
permissions.
Okay, all right. So I guess as a step forward from here, and obviously you'll send me that list of professions, we would look at setting up a company so that around, you know, and you look into that the student being able with the student organization being able to transition from as of the 5th of August, whether the current school we're studying at is eligible for us to be able to go from a study visa, work on that study visa, and then in one of those 135 professions, and there begin that process in the company.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That.
It certainly sounds a lot more straightforward than really trying to go through almost the lottery of temporary residency. You know, you sort of show up and hope for the best.
Yeah, temporary residency, because it's based on quota, and obviously the quota is very limited. To give you an example, I cannot tell you right now how much is the quota for Novosibirsk or Altai region, but for Moscow, the quota is 2,000 people per year, which is like 150 people a month, which is nothing. I mean, there are thousands of people from the former Soviet Union republics that would like to get temporary residency based on quota because they don't have any other grounds. So it's nothing. Yeah, and obviously when there is such a high demand and such a low supply, it's not very hard. I mean, it's not very easy to get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
so temp residency quota is the toughest process, and as you said, yeah, it's pretty much a lottery because you can submit. I mean, you can submit application every month to get to the quota, but you can be rejected every month, or you can get it from the first month. But no, we right now have clients that are saying, listen, because of the quarantine, maybe we try our luck because there are probably not that many people queuing or trying to apply. We'll see.
Yeah.
And next week for several.
Yeah. No, this definitely sounds like, and I think you mentioned in one of your other videos that I think they're actually looking at phasing out the whole temporary residency concept and just going straight to a more permanent residency structure.
Yes, Putin said that about a month and a half ago, but nothing has been introduced to the parliament. I mean, no drafts of the laws, and we right now do not understand how that will work if they just straightforward shift the amount of quotas. Now it won't be for the temporary residency, but will be for residency if somebody doesn't have any other grounds to do that. Yeah, so probably it will be like that. So or they will just at all terminate this quota thing, and anyone would be able to apply for residency, but provided the grounds are there. And right now, I mean, Russia has pretty much, I mean, to my understanding, it's quite interesting in my view. Like if you're a student, you can apply for residency. If you graduated as a student, you can apply for residency. If you worked in this position, you can apply for residency. If you have a Russian kid, you can apply for residency. If you are married, you can apply right now for temporary residency, but most probably they will make it to apply for permanent residency. So, and then you can mix those. Yeah, if you're a student and then found a job in one of these 135 positions, you don't need to wait until you graduate. You can basically utilize two grounds. So maybe they will terminate the quota thing at all because there are already plenty of grounds.
So one more question. Now, in regards to like with children, like my daughter and her husband, who are in overseas now, actually have a child who was born in Russia last August or September, I think it was. And obviously, neither of the parents are Russian citizens. Does that have any is that in any way advantageous towards getting citizenship or residency, I should say?
Unfortunately, no. Unlike US, where used to be, I don't know how Trump changed the legislation now. I heard that he's not allowing anymore giving birth, and they're refusing visas to those that are coming to US to give birth with this particular goal. So Russia doesn't. I mean, you still need to have, as they call it, it's not a ground-based; it's blood-based. So one of the parents has to be Russian. So even the fact that a child was born in Russia and has a Russian birth certificate, but both parents are foreigners, doesn't give any benefit to anyone. Only benefit would be when the child will reach 18 years of age, and then that child can apply for residency based on the fact that he or she was born in Russia, and then potentially his parents could utilize that. But
it's a long wait.
It's a long wait. So no.
Now, so in regards to, we've covered this a little bit, but like for the children, as the parents go through permanent residency and then into citizenship, once the parents gain citizenship, do the children gain citizenship at the same time?
Yeah, they just go on. They just go together because minors cannot. Yeah, the minors cannot do anything. I mean, without parents. So if the parent applies, then the minor also apply. But it's just a separate list of separate package of documents, but no other ground. Yeah, so no separate ground is required. So
Yeah.
children go
Yeah.
with the parents.
Yeah. Yeah. So for, you know, if we took our case aside right now, for somebody who want, you know, if I have friends and a family who want to move to Russia after us and whatever else, in your opinion, what would be the most straightforward way for them to come to Russia, to be able to work towards getting residency and citizenship?
Well, again, it depends, of course, on each particular case and situation. I would say that, of course, the student route is very attractive, but I do need to double check with regards to whether just the Russian language courses from a school would be allowing like the final goal of getting
Yep.
residency and citizenship. This I would need to double check. Opening a business and as we discussed, and
Yep.
obtaining work permits, and then in one of those 135 professions. These
Yep.
are, I would say, the most straightforward, fast track ways if we're not talking about any family-based
Yeah.
immigration.
Yeah. So for somebody who like you said, starts the company, which all can be done from outside of Russia.
It's possible to register a company from outside of Russia. It will be required that an applicant, basically the shareholder, the owner of the company, goes to the Russian consulate in his country, like Russian consulate in Australia, signs the forms that are prepared here in Russia. So signs in the presence of a consul the forms, sends them to Russia, and then the documents submitted to the tax authorities for registration. So the company can be registered from outside of Russia, but there is one issue, is that Russian banks are not allowed to open a bank account without physically meeting the general director of the company.
Okay.
So if a foreign national is the 100% owner and the general director of the company and wants to do everything from outside of Russia, it's possible to register the company, but not possible to open the bank accounts without coming to Russia for at least 1 day. If such foreign national appoints Russian national or somebody that is already in Russia as a general director, then it's possible to do everything from outside. In Russia, unfortunately, we don't have such things as nominee directors. We don't have such thing as a registered address. We do not have such thing as registered agent. Yeah, so in Russia, the laws to open the company are very much linked to the premises. So, like we as lawyers, we help foreigners to register companies in Russia, but the address, we cannot use the address where our firm is located because we don't own the building. Yeah. So the concept is that it's not the professional agent, or we just don't have such a thing as professional agent. It's the landlord that has to confirm and provide documents that this company would be located at this particular address. And it has to come from the landlord, not from somebody that helps you out. And nominee directors are basically forbidden. We don't have such a thing because in Russia, any general director is pretty much fully responsible, and at the same time has full power on company daily activities. So it's if somebody appoints, like our clients are saying, listen, we would like to open a company in Russia, but I would like to appoint a Russian national as their general director, we advise that if you do that, such Russian national has to be a very, very trustworthy person, because otherwise there is always risk.
Mm-hmm. So if you do that and you establish a company, now the work visa process, you said, takes up to 3 to 4 months.
If a standard.
Can that be started outside of Russia? So that the people would enter in Russia on that work visa.
Because the process itself is 75, not 75, 100% of the whole process is done by the employer. It can be done from outside of Russia. So people don't need to be in Russia physically while the applications are pending for the work permit. All that is not, so their presence is not required in Russia.
Yep.
But
Okay.
obviously the representative of the company employer who signs the document has to be in Russia, and probably it's not a must, because I mean documents can be sent by UPS, DHL, but yeah, once the work permits are approved, then it's required to get a working visa, come to Russia and collect those work permits in person.
Yeah. So for someone like myself who would start a company and then I engage something like your company, your lawyer firm to arrange for the work permits to be all organized and validated, a lot of that could be done. I'm just trying to think of the person who wants to move to Russia. If they've got to come on a student visa or a tourist visa, I know that the visa situation is different from Australia than it is from the USA. We're only entitled to much shorter visas from Australia.
Yeah.
So, it's just trying to arrange it to minimize the amount of travel backwards and forwards between countries.
Yep. I mean,
and so if you can set the company up per se and have all the work visas sort of in place, then basically you fly from, in this case, Australia, arrive in Russia and enter the country on that work visa, and then begin that whole process.
You cannot register. You at first. You cannot come to Russia on a work visa without the employer. Yeah, so at first you need to have a company which will then invite you as employee. So at first you register the company, that company issues and sponsors the work permit, issues the invitation letter for the work visa, and then you come to Russia already as an employee of the company. Yeah, we also do not have a shareholder visas. Yeah, so a foreign national can own a company in Russia on a tourist visa, on a business visa, but the fact that the foreign national owns the company in Russia, even 100%, doesn't give him a long-term visa just by this fact. Yeah, so we have many clients that basically register a company in Russia, and then they employ themselves in their own company, and that's the way to have the long-term visa and documents to be able to reside in Russia.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Yeah. You certainly know what you're talking about, which is good, because, like I said, for people outside of Russia and for people who aren't really good at reading Russian, or it is a challenge to find relevant information, because lots of people will say, oh, you can do this and you can do that, but they don't really know. They're just guessing, and it takes a while to be able to sort through a whole lot of things to find, well, this person actually knows what they're talking about. This person understands the law and all the things that are involved in that, and it can actually help me through the process of gaining residency.
Yeah, I will also send you a link to our other website. We're not only immigration lawyers, but we also help foreign companies or foreign individuals to start business in Russia.
Yeah.
So it's called startuprussia.com. There is some information about registering a company, the rules, the procedures. It's not updated very frequently, because there are not that many laws that are changing with regards to setting up companies in Russia. But there is the basic information there. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, well, I will have to read through some of this information, and from there work out how to proceed. Thank you for your help.
Yeah. Welcome. It's glad talking to you. If we can, when we stop, I would like to talk about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, good.
Okay, thanks, John.